Hello everyone, good evening. My name is Whitney and I'm here with Blick Art Materials. And tonight our project is block printed pillows. And before I get into the project and the process and all of my materials, like always, we would like to get the conversation started in the chat. And my prompt for tonight is, may seem less art related, but I would like to know your favorite city. And I am thinking, of course, of architecture, right? So I have a lot of buildings around here. This was actually developed as a Blick lesson plan project about community pride and sort of standing up for your city. And so I am curious about your favorite locale. I would have to say I often think of the New York skyline and, of course, the Brooklyn Bridge for me. That iconic arch and the brick, and it's beautiful and I love it. I didn't print it though. Go figure. It seems like a difficult thing to do. So if any of you do that, I would like to see it. So before I get too into the process, because I get ahead of myself very quickly, and then I have to backtrack and y'all will be confused. I want to talk about the materials I'm using. So I'm using Blick Ready Cut. It's not actually linoleum, and I'm sure its full composition is proprietary, right? But it's some sort of rubberized material. It's super soft. You can see I can actually like roll it even, which is crazy. When I think of linoleum cutting, I think of actual linoleum, like those really hard blocks we would be given in grade school, and you'd have to heat them up, and they were still like somehow too hard to carve. This is not that by any means. And it is great for beginners because it is two-toned. You might be thinking that's a shadow, but no. It is gray on the surface, and this is the part where you'll be carving. And underneath, it's white, and it changes about a fourth of the way down, which is how deep you need to cut for the image to actually print. So if you are a beginner and you're a little nervous about cutting into surfaces, I swear this is so easy. It's like cutting through butter, and the two-tone can also really help you see what your end result will be. And I'll point that out to you later on as I'm carving. And the second main product I have here is Speedball fabric and block printing ink. And I'll talk more about that, I think, as I'm mixing it, but it is a great product. And definitely perfect for this project because we are block printing on fabric. It's all in the name there, right? So to get started, you'll need your block, your Ready Cut, and I have some transfer paper here. And it's basically like a tissue paper. You can probably hear it crinkly on the mic there. And it has graphite on one side, and it's clean, for lack of a better term, on the other side. And you will want that clean side up. So I'm just going to line it up here. It doesn't have to be perfect by any means. And on our website, on our bundle page, if you click that little bit.ly link, it'll take you there. I do have a template along with all of the materials I'm talking about and using, and step-by-step instructions. Lots of artists are visual learners, but not all. I know I need written instructions sometimes. But there is also going to be a template there. I've chosen the Eiffel Tower for us because hello, art mecca would be Paris, right? In many ways. And I'm going to pull this all the way over to the edge to try to conserve this part of the block. The way that we're printing this, obviously we only need the image. We don't have any sort of detached surrounding areas. So I'm gonna save that part of the block for later. And really, all you have to do to transfer it is trace. I'm using a ballpoint pen. You can also use a pencil, a ball stylus, something that's actually meant more for sculpture. Really, all we need is localized pressure. And this can take a while to trace all of it. I just want to get this one little part of the arc for you here at the bottom. And to simplify things, what I would recommend that you do if you're using this template is to trace the white lines. I know, it sounds crazy. We're already doing backwards and forwards and negative and positive spaces, right? This is going to be, one, easier for you to see as you go along, but it's what I've done for my step 2, so I'll be able to explain it better when I get there. But it'll help with the carving as well. And I know a lot of people stay away from printmaking because I think there is a tendency to think it's really complicated because of the negative and positive space. And notice sometimes I even break my own rules. For this bottom part, I'm actually going to trace the black lines because it is faster. Sometimes speed wins, right? It's really what works best for you. But I do want to really try to reiterate, like, printmaking is not scary. And sort of negative, positive imagery stuff does not have to be scary. And it doesn't even have to be complicated. Okay, I think that's probably enough for you to see what's going on here. And I think we all, artists and non-artists alike, understand how transfer paper works. It's a lot like carbon paper. So I suppose all of you very young artists might not. But for those of you who know what carbon paper is, it's pretty straightforward. You can even see, before I pull this up, maybe you can see. Tessa, can you see? Do I have to move it? Okay. These white lines where I was tracing, and that's actually where the graphite's been pressed from the paper onto the printing block that I have here. And it's messy and it can smudge, which isn't really a big deal. I would go over this, and I would recommend that you at home go over the transfer with either that same ballpoint pen or with a Sharpie, because it will smudge and it will smear, and there is nothing worse than getting really into your print and you're up here carving away and you realize everything below has been rubbed away by your arm. I have been there. It's disappointing. And it is easy to get lost then in your positive and negative spaces. Before I go into one that I can carve, made from that, I do want to talk briefly about, and I have this here, what if you don't want to use our template? like, that's fine, of course. Maybe you want to print an image of your house, or the place where you grew up, or your favorite building isn't the Eiffel Tower and you want to print your favorite building, which is perfectly fine. Or maybe you want to print your favorite cat. And I did do one Thomas Kitten print here. And so how do you get to this, I would like to say, lovely graphic image from this really ugly, grainy, dark photo that you probably can't even see well on your screen right now? Super easy. It's about as easy as the transfer paper. Because I am starting out with an image, and you can even make this easier than I have on myself and use a program that will poster size. This doesn't have to be a fancy program. There are lots of free apps for your phone that will do that for you, or have that as an option. And that will really show you it'll make your image black and white and very stark. So already it will start to look like a printed poster. But what I'm doing is I used this photo to trace. Now, tracing is not cheating. Tracing is perfectly okay. Also, my pen's run out, so I will stop tracing. But it's not cheating. It's sometimes very necessary. And clearly, Thomas Kitten has a very unique form, so I needed to start with an image. We're going to pretend I traced around this whole image and my pen didn't run out, and you didn't have to wait around to watch me trace the whole image. But I will pretend I did that, and then I just came over and then traced from that image. Now you could use transfer paper, right, and there are a number of ways to get a photocopy onto a piece of paper. I actually made this harder on myself than I needed to, so when I traced this, I realized I forgot to reverse it. And this might be something that you will come across, hopefully not now. I actually, sadly, most of these buildings are fairly symmetrical, so it didn't matter. But I definitely forgot to flip the image on our lovely Statue of Liberty here, and then had to recarve that after I realized she was holding her torch in the wrong hand after I printed it. So I don't want that to happen to you. And here I just liked where his gaze was. I liked the composition of it. I didn't want to flip it. So something really easy you can do that doesn't involve transfer paper or any sort of equipment, I just put this right up to a lampshade and traced it again. And so then I ended up with this image. But that's just a sort of rundown of, if you're like me and you're going to be winging it and you want to do your own thing, there are so many ways to do that and make it work for you. All right, I'm going to move my template here. I have a piece that I've already started carving, and I am using the Blick and Speedball linoleum cutters. And you will probably only be working with one. You change out your blade very easily. It unscrews. You pull out this, it's almost like a pen nib. And then that slides right back in and tightens. Just so I don't have to change out blades while I'm talking to you all, I have a couple up here with all my favorite sizes. Like the very, very tiny V gouge, a big V gouge, and this one, I don't know if you can see, it's very square, very flat and square. I like that because it makes these really smooth cuts. Or if I wanted to trim that down, because it's pretty crazy in there, right? Looks like a comb. I could just go in there and level it. Okay. So I did tell you I would talk about positive and negative imagery and sort of how to keep it straight in your mind while you're working on this piece. And if you all know me and you've been watching these videos for a while, I do like to wing it sometimes, but in reasonable ways. And by that I mean sometimes in printmaking you'll hear to color everything you're printing in a Sharpie and block it out and do this, or block out everything you need to carve, and it just gets too complicated and it feels like too many steps to me, and honestly, it confuses me. So if you're feeling confused when you read things like that, it's not you. It's just a confusing way to talk about printmaking sometimes. What I do, and what I did for the examples up here, is I start with the outside. Because for this process, we know that like nothing's happening outside of this image of the Eiffel Tower. So we know all of this needs to go away. Along those lines, the ready cut, that color shift, not only do I know that this area won't print because I've carved deep enough, it also changes to the white, and I know that's my white area. That is my negative space. It's built right into this block, which makes it so easy. So I like to go around with one of the V gouges to get a line started, and then I come in and I clean it up. That flat one. You do want to watch. I don't always watch my fingers. I'm really bad at it. And if you are bad at it and concerned about that as well, have these things handy bench hook. This is sort of a zigzag, funny Z shape. This one's metal, and from Speedball. We also have larger wooden ones if you're working really big and doing a wood cut. For our purposes and for the size of the ready cut, this one will do just fine. But that sort of wonky shape means that it will hook on the edge of your table. And you can see, not the edge, but I'm pushing on it and it's not going anywhere, right? So when I have my piece against it, I don't need to hold up here. I can just carve. Now, it does mean for our purposes of the video, it's probably hard to see. So I'm not going to work that way this whole time. And I'm also not going to carve this whole thing, but I did want to show you the bench hook. So it is very handy and it will help keep you safe. So what is happening here is I've got two negative spaces, right? And I have this line, and oh dear, what do I carve there? What did I mean to do there? Well, one, if you're working off of our reference image, you can look to that to see what is going on. Or you can look to your own reference image and determine from there. But really, it kind of becomes intuitive because I know if this is negative, something has to be positive next to it, right? Otherwise, it would just be a bigger negative space. So I know that I can carve here. And so I do. And then for that, what I just did there is I made this the line. And this I can carve away, but I do want this piece. And if you go sort of in a slow, it can be a bit methodical, right? But if you sort of just take each of those big decisions, we'll say, one at a time, it starts to make sense. And you're not trying to think of, is my Sharpie line where I should carve or where I shouldn't carve, or is you can just sort of slow down and do it, right? And these triangles really could go either way. I think I'm going to have the inside be what's carved out, like the example. And you'll notice sometimes I do cut towards my finger and sort of grab. And what I'm doing there is I'm not actually pushing forward, I'm pushing down into the ready cut. I'm really more or less gouging. And then I have this little flap that is still stuck. So I just hook it with my finger and take it off. Didn't want you all to think you have to cut towards your fingers that way, because that is not safe. But if you're just sort of gouging and peeling off small parts, you'll find with the ready cut, sometimes when you make a cut, well, of course that one does it. When you make a cut, it doesn't want to finish if you stop abruptly. And you then have to peel it off. But I hope you all get the idea of what it's like to carve this thing, right? And what that would look like for either your Eiffel Tower or whatever building you have chosen. Which reminds me, if you are just joining and you are confused by what's going on in the chat and why everybody's talking about cities and places, our question tonight for our e-gift card giveaway, and that is a $100 e-gift card giveaway, is what is your favorite city? And of course, I'm asking because I'm thinking about the architecture of different places, and I'm thinking about buildings with this pillow project. So, what's your favorite city? All right, I'm ready to print. Not this plate, of course. I have a finished one. All right, so this one here, and you can see this one is very well used and loved. And there is something I should have done that I didn't do, and I'm gonna do it now. I'm gonna do it, Tessa. So you can see I carved all of this away. It's almost like this waterfall behind the Eiffel Tower. And I shouldn't have carved all that. That's a lot of work, and a lot of time to make nothing, right? Quite literally to make nothing, to make an empty space. That takes some time. And this is really bendable, it's thin, and you can cut it with scissors. So I'm gonna cut it now, just to show you all. That's so easy to cut with scissors. I have even ready cut with kid scissors. So clearly I have my big grown-up scissors right now, but you can even use blunt kid scissors to cut through this stuff. And if I had done this before I had carved all of that and wasted it, I would have so much printing material left, right? It doesn't look like a lot. You'd be surprised. There's so much you can do with these. And you know, mine is so stained here. I'm just gonna get rid of my scraps. Mine is so stained here because I have printed probably at least 50 of these. And it is still a good printing block. I can still get a great image from it. It works, right? So you're gonna invest a little bit of time in making this image, but then you can use it for a long time on more than just pillows. We can talk about that at the end, but yeah, save your scraps. You never know. You might want to make a stamp. So I'm using, and I mentioned in the beginning, Speedball fabric block printing ink. Just by its title, clearly it is perfect for our application. So I'm using the magenta, and I want to show you all how it is mixable. So I'm going to grab the violet. I actually put out way more magenta than I meant to, but I'm going to go with it. No one purple Eiffel Tower is like another, right? Okay. So you will need a mixing knife if you're mixing, but make sure I throw that in the optional materials for everyone. You can see it is kind of ropey, and it's like a thin but sticky ink. It's not quite like a paint, like an oil paint or a acrylic paint. I guess it's a little closer to the consistency of an oil paint. But it has a pretty specific consistency, and you can see, maybe, let me put this over here. You can see if I were baking, this would make a lovely meringue because I can make peaks, right? And it doesn't take much to really get it all mixed together. Okay, so I have that. Here. I'll get my roller. You don't want to just stick your roller right in the ink, right? You're going to end up with a whole mess. It's going to like clog under here and make it hard for you to clean up later. But you want to find a place where you have some ink and you're going to pull it out. And I like to cross. And then it's probably driving you all crazy, but that nice tacky sound, one of my favorite sounds, and also lets me know I have a good even coating of ink. And this ink, I don't think I actually talked about it. It is oil-based and water-soluble. You heard right. I know what I'm saying. Is water-based, or is oil-based. Clearly know what I'm saying. Oil-based, water-soluble. Which sounds like quite the contradiction. Either way, I would have said that, but it is, right? It's actually chemically altered so that it is oil paint, and it acts like an oil paint or an oil-based ink. But you get all of the benefits of being able to clean it up with soap and water. So I don't know if any of you have worked with sleeves. If any of you have worked with the water-based oil paints. There are a few brands that make them, but they are quite a delight. They sort of live in no man's land, right? They're not quite oil paints, certainly not acrylics, but behave and take on tendencies of both, which I think just makes it magical. And that means that this can be used in a classroom. I mentioned before that this was one of our Blick lesson plans, and you can also find it on our lesson plan page because it's safe, it's non-toxic, you can use it in a classroom. And you'll see if you're a printmaker, you are probably cringing and rolling your eyes because I am over-inking my plate, and I am doing that on purpose. So bear with me, printmakers. I promise I know what I'm doing. Because we are going to print this onto fabric. And printing on fabric is just inherently different in many ways from printing on paper. I'm also going to, well, it's better if you're doing this at home to have done this part before now. Told you I like to get ahead of myself and then I just start doing things. But I need to measure this, right? So I don't want it as wide as I have it. I'm gonna cut it about right here. And warning, it's gonna make a crazier noise than the ink, but I think this is a super simple, important thing for every artist to know, is that you should never be cutting all the way down a line, especially of canvas, because you can just make this little notch. Wait for it. Take out your earbuds if you have them in. Oof. My arms aren't quite long enough. But I now have a perfectly straight edge. It goes evenly against the warp, and you might have a few strings. You can just pull those off, let them fall. It's really satisfying. I swear, I will never cut paper or canvas the same way after I learned that you can really do that. And it might look really bold and extravagant, that gesture, but there's like no strength involved whatsoever. I promise. And now for length, I do have the right length on this one, really. You want it to be about, you want the length of your print. And you see I have it doubled here. So you want the length of your print doubled and extra. Now that can be up to you what that extra is. You need at least 2 inches. This is plenty. I'll probably end up cutting off some excess from the top later. All right, I'm gonna make sure this is still good and tacky. It is. Another thing to note is I am putting my canvas on the block and not the other way around. So I'm gonna leave this block flat on the table, and I sort of size it up at the bottom and then the top and press. And this is where it's nice to really put your whole weight into it. For any printmakers out there, you are probably again thinking, I have totally lost it because I'm pressing into this, and I could just use my trusty Baron here. But I've made many of these, and the Baron, it's not gonna help you out in this case. It can make your canvas slide, and then as ink comes through the back, which is something we want, it tells us we have good coverage. It's going to sort of gum up your nice Baron, and you're just not gonna be pleased with what happens there. The best thing for this is not actually rubbing, which can get you a smeary print in ways that it's totally fine with paper. But on the canvas, it will smear. You just want to press directly down. I have a nice studio set up at home where I have really short tables because I'm short. But here I will stand on my tippy toes, press down as best as I can. But I really like to just sort of get all my weight in one spot and just move around that way. And this one looks pretty good. Hopefully you can see where some of the ink is coming through, and that is perfectly fine. Of course, you don't want it just sort of pouring through your canvas. That would be crazy, right? But you want good coverage. And a good trick for sort of gauging that is I always like to peel off just a little bit, and I know this one's fine, but if it wasn't, at this point I could then sort of take my hand from the back and smooth it over and lay it in exactly the same place. And then I would continue to press. But this one looks beautiful. So So that is my lovely purple Eiffel Tower. If I were working on this in real time, this would be the part where I just sort of set it aside, wait 24 hours. This is going to need to dry. And that dry time does depend on heat, humidity levels. Sometimes I've had it take up to like 3 days. Sometimes it's done that evening when I printed it in the morning. But you're gonna wanna make sure it's totally dry, and you can touch it and you'll see I got purple, clearly. We know this one's not dry. But, oh, sorry, I didn't show that in the overhead. Thank you, Tessa. I knew you were giving me a look for something. So on this one, obviously we know it's not dry, but you know, you'll be able to touch it, and if you get ink like that, do not heat set it yet. You will ruin your piece, you will ruin your iron. Let it dry completely. And then, because this is a fabric printing ink, there are instructions on the back even about heat setting. Super easy and nice, super hot, dry iron, and you want either an old dish rag or even a scrap piece of paper is fine. You want something in between, a piece of parchment, just in between the ink and the print and your iron to keep everything nice and clean. On the off chance that a little bit did get on your iron, you don't want that everywhere. Okay, so I have one that is dry. I'll pretend I waited, I did my due diligence in heat setting, and now I am ready to go. So the thing that I think makes this little pillow so special, and yeah, we'll go back to the Eiffel Tower, is the fold for the bottom. Now, clearly I'm not gonna just glue this or cut it and glue it as is. It wouldn't stand, right? And all of these really are standing on their own. This one being so tall and so narrow. This one here, my Statue of Liberty, she has some rice on the bottom to make her a little more bottom heavy. But generally, shapes that are pretty solid, they're gonna stand on their own. And this is actually called a gusset. I think of it as the fold that makes bags of trail mix stand up on my desk. But it's very easy to do. I didn't even know it had a name until after doing this project a few times, actually. I make a, let's see, so I make little pinchers. And my thumb and my middle finger go below. My index finger is on top. And I just sort of tuck and pinch. And really, you're making, call it a heart shape, an M, a W, what have you. Basically, the canvas sort of undulates and comes back out again. And you can see that, right, in that shape. Cool. Thank you, Tessa. I have Tessa here to keep me in check. All right, so I like to get it nice and even and lined up, even though I know I'm gonna move it later. And my little clothespin there, super helpful. You want this to stay together while cutting. So I'm gonna pull out those scissors again. You can do any shape you want. Clearly, I've sort of just followed the outlines of the buildings or the outline of Thomas Kitten there. The arch was a really fun one to do because of all of its negative space. And carving this one was kind of wacky, but it's fun. Really, you can make any shape you want. So I'm gonna do really any distance from the print that you want. You might want to experiment with it a bit. Of course, the closer you get to your image, Do I have a good example of that? I don't think I do really, but I'll pull this one out. Imagine if I were any closer than I was on this Lady Liberty, the whole building would sort of start to wrap around its own sides, which is fine. Just want you to be warned and know what will happen with it. Conversely, the more space around an image, the more it sort of just sits on top and isn't actually shaped by how you shape the pillow. Hopefully that made sense. Sometimes I say things. They don't make as much sense as I think they do. But I think that one did. All right, so I'm just gonna start cutting here, or I will keep talking nonsense. And this one, I'm just gonna do some wacky shapes because I can. And clearly, I have no plan here for this one. You might have a plan. You can certainly sort of trace where you want to cut with a pencil. You can be methodical with this, but I'm just not always the most methodical. And with this, it's fun to just kind of have fun with it. You can't go too wrong, right? I mean, I guess eventually you can cut too much fabric, but you can keep trimming away bits that you don't like. And just keep it going. We'll say I like this. And then it is time to glue. So we're almost done. We're almost done. We're almost there. I'm using Aleene's Quick Dry Tacky Glue because it is great. It dries fast, like it says, and it is a tacky glue. It is important to note it's not technically a fabric glue. So if you're making something and you know you're going to need to throw it in a washer at some point, this is not going to be the glue for you. But there are other things out there for you. Stitch Witch, I have listed in the optional materials on our website, our bundle page, where you would also get the template. And that would give you a washable edge, or a washable end product. But it takes a little bit more planning and ironing, and it's really only if you know you're going to need that as an option. Notice I am right where I made that gusset. I put a clothespin there, and then I'm going to put one here. That's because I really want that to seal well. I'm going to show you what I did on this side. Get my trash out of the way. And can you see that well, Tessa? Mm-hmm. From above? Cool. I'm going to try not to lean into it like I do, but I want to make sure I get this bottom edge, and I want to get this part so that when I press down, that gets glued, this gets glued, but I do still have this opening, and that's going to allow it to really expand. And I want to make sure I go all the way up the edge here. I also have found using the glue bottle itself to sort of gauge distance works well with this. I like to gauge by just where you would put the cap back on, and that way I have this line that I'm tracing the entire way. and I don't go too far off course. But again, the way that this is cut and folded, and then you're going to be stuffing it, if you go off course, no one will ever know but you. And some clothespins to keep it all together. All right, so that is, gosh, step 2, step 3, getting a little collection of Eiffel Towers up there. One more to bring out for you, and that is in my trusty cart. All right, this one has been glued. It's dry. My clothespins are off. You can see now how this opens, right? And what that did, what folding that did, is it gave us extra space on the bottom. So instead of it being like, this gives me an excuse to pull out this Tom-Tom bag. It's not, oh no, actually this one has it too. So you can see this one opens up and is lovely. Thought I had something up here that I could show you that doesn't do that. Imagine a bag that just doesn't open all the way, like a brown paper bag. Actually, our Blick bags, the little paper sleeve bags. Yes, those do not have much room to grow. So I worked in stores for years and years, and that was always like you could fit a single pad of paper in those bags and just keep it clean, or a magazine, but nothing chunky was going in there. Now another thing to note, and I like to share how I mess things up with you all because you're bound to do it as well, and more so if I say nothing. It's always good to leave your opening at the top, which I did, but it's nice to be able to fit your hand in, if possible. It's not a requirement, but you'll see in a moment with my stuffing here. This is the Mountain Mist fiber fill, I believe. This is on our bundle page as well. You sort of get to a point, I can't get it to the bottom. And using a paintbrush works well. You can sort of push it, or a chopstick. Maybe you have a knitting needle laying around. That works well. And actually, I got too good of a print to think to mention it, but the reason I actually brought this brush to the table today was so I could show you what to do if you get a print that just doesn't print entirely, and you don't want to do a redo. You can kind of fake it. It works well. You can use a bristle brush to, let's see, this one is wet. You can use a bristle brush to really get in there. You can't see that, so sorry. To get in there and say, maybe I wanted to fix this tiny line here. I would use my bristle brush with just the tiniest bit of ink. And I'm not gonna paint, I'm gonna dab. So it blends in with the print better. You don't want to drag a brush across. And of course, I would have actually chosen a finer brush for this particular space. You can kind of start to fill it in. And so if you end up with any gaps like that, I actually, on the Tom-Tom pillow, he's got some lighter areas where it didn't print all the way, and I'm okay with that here. But there was some up here that I thought looked confusing for whatever reason. I didn't like it as much, and I actually did go in and dabbed in a little bit more ink, and here as well. So that is super easy to do, and it will blend seamlessly as long as you're sort of dabbing at it and not really dragging a brush across the surface. But really, I think we get the idea of what this is. You add stuffing until you can stuff it no more, and it's a pillow, right? You will need to seal off the top. But I think, and I like to really overstuff, but honestly, this could even be left as it is. I like, apparently, a very firm Eiffel Tower. It's got a bit more to it. You might be wondering about the writing on the back. I think I mentioned it in the very beginning, but if you were to want to write it on, let me slow down my words. If you were to want to write on the back of your print, this is the stage you would do it in. Would be after you've cut it, you've got it glued. Maybe it's not glued yet, that's okay. But the shape is here, and so you know you're not gonna cut your words when you shape it. It's already done. All right, few things. What things? I do have another pillow that I am hiding under my table because I made too many things to put on my table. But clearly I enjoyed my TomTom print here. And I wanted to talk about what you could do with these really ridiculous tiny scraps of Blick Ready Cut that you might have. And you can make the tiniest of prints. So I have a whole series here, and these can be used for anything. I know Ashley did a wonderful project back over the holidays, a while back now, right? Over the holidays, making wrapping paper. I could make my very own silly cat wrapping paper or greeting cards, or you can just keep reusing them until they will print no more, which will be a long, long time from now, many prints from now. What I did with these little ones was I made another pillow. And this one is for all you folks out there who do not want to shape or glue or deal with any of that mess. You just want an awesome design that you've made and you want it on a couch pillow. This is your answer. This is actually listed in the optional materials on the bundle page. Follow the bit.ly and it will take you there. And it's already sewn. It comes to you with a zipper and it's great. Super easy, basically ready to start as soon as you get it. And I think that is all the surprise items I have back here. Yes. Answer that question. Tell us your favorite city, and that will enter you into the $100 Blick e-gift card giveaway that we are going to post at the very end of this video, which is very, very quickly approaching as I am done. We've got all our prints here, and I hope you all really, really enjoyed the project tonight, and I hope you make your very own printed pillow.